My fiancé gave me her blessing to sleep with my best friend. She didn't scream it during a fight or whisper it as a tearful confession. She said it on a Tuesday night over lukewarm takeout curry with the same calm, rational tone she used to discuss quarterly reports or her 401k. She laid it out like a business proposal, a logical, if unconventional solution to a problem we both knew existed but had never dared to name. And as I stared at her across our minimalist dining table, the woman I was supposed to spend my life with, I realized our relationship wasn't just dying. She was handing me the shovel and pointing to where I needed to dig the grave. "I think you should," Ava said, pushing a piece of naan around her plate. "I think it would be good for you." For us, the words seemed to warp the air in our pristine white-walled apartment. For a moment, I was sure I had misheard, that the sound of the city traffic 10 floors below had twisted her words into something monstrous. "You think I should?" What I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She finally looked up, her clear blue eyes holding mine with a disquieting intensity. There was no malice there, no anger. There was just logic. It was the same look she got when she was about to win a case in court. "Sleep with Chloe," she repeated, enunciating each word with careful precision. "You two have had this thing for years, this unspoken, unresolved energy. I see it when she's here. You see it. We're about to get married, Liam. I don't want to walk down that aisle wondering if you're always going to be looking over your shoulder thinking, what if? So go. Find out. Get it out of your system. Then you can come back and we can start our lives with a clean slate." I felt the blood drain from my face. A clean slate. She said it as if my decade-long friendship with Chloe was a stain, a dirty mark that could simply be scrubbed away with a single act of, what betrayal, intimacy. An experiment my mind couldn't categorize it. My fiancé, the woman who had a color-coded spreadsheet for our wedding planning, was suggesting I have a one-night stand with my best friend as a form of emotional house cleaning. "You can't be serious," I stammered, my appetite vanishing, the curry in my stomach turning to lead. "Ava, that's insane. Chloe is my best friend." "Exactly," she said, nodding as if I'd just proven her point. "She's your best friend, and you're in love with her a little bit. It's okay. I'm not mad. It's a classic story. But I'm a realist, Liam. I can't compete with a ghost. I can't build a future on a foundation that has a crack in it. I'm offering you a chance to fix the crack before we build on it." I leaned back, the hard lines of the designer chair digging into my spine. I looked around the room at the life Ava and I had so carefully curated. The abstract art on the walls, the expensive sound system, the perfectly aligned books on the shelves. It was beautiful. It was tasteful. And in that moment, it felt as sterile and lifeless as a museum exhibit. Our relationship had become like this room, perfect on the surface, but no one was allowed to touch anything. We hadn't had a real passionate argument in over a year. We hadn't made love with the lights on in longer than I could remember. Our intimacy had devolved into a comfortable, predictable routine, a peck on the cheek in the morning, a tired hug at night. We were perfect roommates, efficient co-managers of our shared life. But soulmates? Lovers. The thought felt like a distant memory from another lifetime. I thought back to how it used to be. I remembered a weekend 6 years ago, long before the high-powered job had consumed her. We'd woken up on a Saturday morning, and on a whim, Ava had thrown some clothes in a bag and said, "Let's just drive." We ended up in a tiny coastal town 3 states away. We ate greasy diner food, we walked on a windswept beach under a sky full of stars, and we made love in a cheap motel room with an energy that was raw and spontaneous and alive. She had been adventurous then, her laughter echoing in the small room. She had looked at me with a fire in her eyes, a passion that made me feel like the center of her universe. Where did that woman go? When did we trade that exhilarating fire for this cold, predictable comfort? And then my mind, as it always did, drifted to Chloe. Chloe with her paint-stained fingers and the galaxy of freckles across her nose. We had met in art school, two insecure dreamers who bonded over a shared love for chiaroscuro and a mutual terror of graduation. Our friendship wasn't built on grand adventures. It was built in the quiet late-night hours in the studio, the air thick with the smell of turpentine and creative energy. I remembered one specific night years ago. We were both struggling with our final projects. I was stuck on a sculpture, my hands and mind refusing to cooperate. Chloe, sensing my frustration, put down her own brush. She didn't offer advice. She just put on some music, made us coffee, and started talking about anything and everything, old movies, stupid jokes, her fear that she'd end up designing corporate logos for a living. And as we talked, as the pressure dissipated, I felt the creative block inside me dissolve. We worked side by side until dawn, not as two separate artists, but as two halves of a single creative mind. There was no physical touch, not even a hug, but it was one of the most intimate nights of my life. It was a connection Ava, with all her logic and planning, could never understand. Liam, Ava's voice snapped me back to the present. "Are you even listening to me?" "I'm listening," I said, my voice hoarse. I can't believe what you're suggesting. What about Chloe? Does she get a say in this experiment? She's a person, Ava, not a variable in one of your equations. Of course she's a person, Ava said, a hint of impatience in her tone. And she's a smart person. She knows this thing exists between you two as much as I do. Maybe she wants it resolved too. The casual, clinical way she spoke about Chloe's potential desires sent a spike of anger through me. But beneath the anger was a terrifying kernel of truth. Hadn't I always wondered? Hadn't there been moments charged with unspoken electricity when I'd looked at Chloe and felt a pull so strong it scared me? I was the one who always pulled back, the one who reinforced the boundaries, terrified of what would happen if I didn't. Ava stood up and began clearing the table, her movements crisp and efficient. "I'm going to bed. I have an early meeting. Just think about it, Liam. Think about what you really want. A marriage with no secrets or a friendship full of them." She walked out of the room, leaving me alone in the silence, her shocking proposal hanging in the air like poison gas. For the first time, I felt truly trapped. My logical, rational fiancé had just outmaneuvered me. She had taken the biggest secret of my heart, the one I had guarded for a decade, and turned it into a homework assignment. The next day was a blur of confusion and anguish. I sat in my home office staring at a blank design file on my screen, Ava's words replaying on a loop. "Get it out of your system." It was both a permission slip and a threat. A test. One I wasn't sure I could pass or if I even wanted to. Finally, I picked up the phone. My thumb hovered over Chloe's name. Calling her felt like a betrayal in itself. How could I even begin this conversation? "Hey, Chloe, funny story. My fiancé, the woman I'm supposed to marry in 6 months, thinks I should sleep with you to see if I still want to marry her. You free on Friday?" My stomach churned. But the alternative, doing nothing, pretending the conversation with Ava never happened, and walking down that aisle with this monstrous secret hanging over me, was even worse. I pressed the call button. She answered on the second ring, her voice a cheerful, chaotic burst of energy. "Liam, don't tell me you finally finished that branding project from hell and are ready to celebrate." "Hey," I said, my own voice sounding flat and alien. Can we meet?" "There's something I need to talk to you about." The cheerfulness in her voice immediately vanished, replaced by concern. "Of course. You sound awful. Is everything okay? Is it Ava? It's complicated, I said. My place in an hour. I'm on my way. When she arrived, her presence filled the sterile apartment with a life it always lacked. She tossed her worn leather jacket over a chair, her gaze sweeping the room before landing on me. She could read me better than anyone. Okay, she said, her expression serious. You look like someone just died. Spill. And so I did. Haltingly, shamefully, I recounted the conversation with Ava. I told her everything, watching as her expression shifted from confusion to disbelief, then to a flash of anger, and finally to something unreadable, something deep and contemplative. When I finished, the silence in the room was heavier than it had ever been. She didn't speak for a long time. She just walked to the window and stared out at the city lights, her back to me. So I'm an experiment, she finally said, her voice quiet and tight. A variable. Something to be resolved. That's what she thinks of me. No, Chloe, that's not it, I rushed to say, standing up. She's trying to solve a problem. Her way of thinking is different. She doesn't get what Liam, she said, turning to face me. Her eyes were glistening, and it was like a knife in my chest. That we have a friendship that's more real than whatever this is. She gestured around the apartment. That maybe the problem isn't some unresolved tension with me, that maybe the problem is you're trying to force a life that doesn't fit and you're too damn scared to admit it. Her words hit me with the force of a physical slap. Because she was right. I was a coward. I had chosen comfort over passion, security over happiness. I was clinging to the wreckage of a relationship because the idea of starting over was too terrifying to contemplate. What do you want me to do, Chloe? I asked, my voice cracking. She looked at me, a decade of shared history in her gaze. There was hurt there, but there was also a profound understanding. What do you want to do, Liam? This isn't about Ava giving you permission. This is about you. For once in your life, what do you actually want? The question hung between us, the only question that had ever mattered. And in that moment, looking at her, the only person who had ever seen the real me, the answer was terrifyingly clear. I don't know who moved first. It was a mutual surrender, a closing of a distance that had been maintained by sheer force of will for years. We didn't go to a hotel. We didn't try to create a romantic fantasy. We went to the one place that had always been ours, her studio. The space was a chaotic, beautiful mess smelling of clay oil paints and coffee. It was a testament to a life lived with passion, a stark contrast to my own perfectly ordered, emotionally barren apartment. There were no candles, no soft music. There was just the low hum of the city outside, the dim light from a single drafting lamp, and the overwhelming presence of the truth between us. The tension was unbearable, a mixture of fear, desire, and a strange, heartbreaking grief for the friendship we were about to irrevocably destroy or transform. Are you sure about this? She whispered, her voice trembling slightly. No, I answered honestly, my heart hammering against my ribs. But I'm more scared of what happens if we don't. Her fingers grazed mine, a spark of electricity that shot up my arm, and then she was in my arms, and I was kissing her, and it was nothing like I had imagined. It wasn't gentle or exploratory. It was desperate. It was a release of a decade of pent-up feelings, of unspoken words, of a love that had been hidden in the shadows of friendship. It was a raw, hungry, and deeply emotional collision. It was messy, and it was painful, and it was the most real thing I had felt in years. In her touch, I didn't just feel passion. I felt seen. I felt understood. This wasn't an experiment to get something out of my system. This was my system, my heart, my very soul finally coming home. It was a language our bodies had known long before our minds were willing to admit it, a conversation held in the dark, honest and unfiltered. It wasn't about sex. It was about recognition, I awoke the next morning on the worn-out couch in her studio, the gray morning light filtering through the large, paint-splattered windows. Chloe was asleep in a chair nearby, a blanket pulled over her, looking peaceful and vulnerable. The smell of turpentine was sharp in the air, and in the harsh light of day, the truth was blindingly clear. Ava's experiment had worked, just not in the way she had intended. I hadn't gotten Chloe out of my system. I had finally irrevocably let her in. The what if hadn't been resolved, it had been answered. And the answer was that I had been trying to build a life with the wrong person. The problem wasn't a crack in the foundation. I had been building on the wrong foundation altogether. The final conversation with Ava was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I didn't spare her the details, but I told her the truth. It worked, I said, standing in the living room that no longer felt like mine. Your test. It worked. It made me realize what I wanted. A flicker of triumphant relief crossed her face. Good, she said. So we can move past this now. No, I said softly. You don't understand. It made me realize I want her, that I think I always have. The problem wasn't Chloe Ava. The problem was us. We stopped being in love a long time ago. We just became comfortable, and I was too much of a coward to say it. For the first time, her composure cracked. Her logical, rational mask crumbled, revealing the hurt and fear beneath. I saw not a cold strategist, but a woman who was just as scared as I was. A woman who had tried to solve an emotional problem with a logical but ultimately catastrophic solution. Our relationship didn't end in a blaze of glory. It ended there in our pristine living room with a quiet, heartbreaking admission of a truth we had both ignored for too long. We often think that relationships die from big betrayals or explosive fights, but more often they die a quiet death. They fade away in the comfortable silences, in the routines we stop questioning, in the slow, imperceptible drift from lovers to roommates. We choose the safety of the familiar over the terrifying, exhilarating work of maintaining real passion. The greatest danger to a long-term love isn't infidelity, it's apathy. It's the moment we stop choosing each other every day and start simply coexisting. This story is a warning against the seductive poison of comfort, a reminder that a true partnership is not a place you arrive at, but a journey you must actively and courageously take together every single day. Letting go of a comfortable life that is slowly suffocating your soul is not failure. It's the first, most terrifying and most necessary step toward actually living again. If this story struck a chord with you, and if you believe in the importance of choosing courage over comfort, please subscribe to our channel Forbidden Hearts. We share stories every week that explore the difficult truths of the human heart. What would you have done in Liam's situation? Could you ever make a suggestion like Ava's? Let us know in the comments below. We value your perspective immensely. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.